Welcome back, everyone, to Fortunate Fishes. What happens when a 12-year-old decides that changing the world is not something he's going to wait to do? Craig Kielburger turned that decision into a global movement. Before he was old enough to drive, he was confronting child labor, meeting with world leaders, and appearing on Oprah as a teenager. And he would return to that stage 4 times. He's written more than 10 books, including New York Times bestsellers, inspired millions of young people, and works along figures like Dalai Lama, Martin Luther King III, Madonna, and many, many more. But his most important message may be the simplest. A fortunate life is not measured by what we accumulate, but what we awaken in others. Today, we talk about purpose, failure, fulfillment, service, and how to build a legacy while we are still alive to live it. And I want to welcome one of R360's most strategic partners, Craig Kielburger. Welcome to Fortunate Fishes.
Well, Charlie, I am really looking forward to this one because I always enjoy our conversations. Typically, they're over a good meal and just hanging out. But I love that we get a chance to invite some others to listen in and to join us in this reflection on life and the journey we've had together.
At 12 years old, you became kind of a symbol of hope. What did the murder of a Pakistani boy do to you that it did not do to all the other adults who read the same exact story you did and just simply turned the newspaper page?
So as you said, that my spark was in 95. I was 12 years old and read this story of this child slave and this incredible, courageous young boy who was 4 years old when he was sold into human trafficking. And we forget that this is the reality for millions and millions of people today. He escaped at the age of 10 and courageously told his story, travels to the United States. He becomes this young activist around the world. And then he's back home in Pakistan and in front of his house is assassinated at 12 years of age. And I was the same age.
And when he was like hanging from a tree or something as a symbol of...
Well, so, I've met children who have been hung from trees when in slave markets for when they had tried to escape. Like, again, this is not from history books. This is not from the the Civil War. This is the present day, and we forget about this. And not to go off on a moment here, but I don't know if you saw a couple of days ago where obviously the president introduced the new legislations on using forced labor as the reason to bring the tariffs in. And, you could agree or disagree with the tariffs, but like that legislation is so important because human trafficking, child labor, these are endemic today. People are always surprised when I say this. No, in the case of this young boy, though, when he was 12 years old, he was shot in front of his home just riding his bike with his friends. And the murderer was never captured, but most believe that he was assassinated because he was speaking out on these issues.
People are so poor in these countries that they may give up their child into slave labor for the family to survive.
Yes.
But then if that child runs away and runs home, it's a big problem, right?
Well, people are so poor that I've met families where the unborn child has been pledged as collateral on a loan, a pesci debt, as they would say in Pakistan or in other countries, different terminology, where a particularly beautiful woman's unborn child is already there's a down payment. The debt burden in certain slave markets or brick kilns or regions, you have debt passed from grandfather to son to grandson. It's almost unfathomable in a world where we're talking about AI and flying cars and all this future technology to realize majority of the world, life has not fundamentally changed all that differently in many developing countries.
But you had to convince a lot of people, and this is what I don't understand. Like, I have 4 children, and if one of my 12-year-olds said, "Hey, I read this, I don't like it, and I figured out some way to go create trouble and knock on doors in Pakistan," there's no freaking way that my kids would be on a plane to Pakistan by themselves. Like, how did you swing that with your mom? She must be a saint, or you must be like the biggest nudge, just like
There's some truth to both of that. So I read this story when I was 12 in the spring at the end of my 7th grade year. And then over the summer had been pen paling, like literally writing letters with this human rights activist in India, little known at the time, named Kailash Satyarthi. And he writes me in this letter, he said, if you really want to understand what's going on, you got to come to Asia. So to your point, I come running into my home like, oh my gosh, this is so excited. I got this, it's in the mailbox inside of our house. I still remember running in, having teared open this letter saying, Mom, I got invited to Asia to travel with this man. And she just goes, who? I'm like, where are you going? Kid doing what? We're going to kick down doors. We're going to free children. He's going to let me come to Asia with him. Yes, my mother was definitely skeptical. And I kept pleading and begging and asking until she banned the word Asia in our house. Like I could not ask it. And finally, in this moment, she just kind of broke down and said, if you raise half the money and you prove that you'd be safe, then, we talk about it. And so for 6 months, I just saved up money and kept pen paling with him. And on my 13th birthday in the, kind of winter break, I guess, probably 9 months later, was on a flight to India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Thailand, and Nepal.
And what did you do with them? Like, you're some 13-year-old kid, whatever, 12, like American. You didn't look like folks there. Like, who is this kid hanging out? And what were you doing?
Well, so he had created an organization that was literally freeing children. So he would go on raids, kick down doors, and see children. And I had the chance to accompany, like I never forget the first time I ever brought kids back after a raid and the reality. And gosh, we all piled into this Jeep and there must have been a dozen and a half of us, like kids barely hanging on off the sides of the, this open air style Jeep. And we're bringing them back to their families. And the kids, like, you got to imagine that these were kids who haven't been home in years. And I remember one kid in particular kept just repeating the same words, we're free, in Hindi, we're free. Like he didn't believe it. And then he started repeating it almost like a chant. And then he started to sing it. All the kids, as we're driving, would sing this. And I mean, for hours, they were just singing these, and we're going through these rural areas of dropping these kids with their homes, which are not easy to find, frankly. And so you're like, where'd you live? And where did this kid and this kid went missing and this kid, and seeing them reunited. We spent time with Mother Teresa at Calcutta in her orphanage, just walking through the door, posting and telling her about what we were trying to do, and her encouraging words of, she was actually the only one who I burst down in tears with. I was so overwhelmed by everything that was going on. And in Asia at the same time, by almost pure fluke, the then Prime Minister of Canada, I grew up in Canada, was on a trade delegation. And I read about it in the local paper, and I thought, he must not know what's going on with these kids. And so I showed up at his hotel, trying to meet him. The front desk, of course, didn't let that happen.
And security wouldn't let you go through, I'm sure. So no. What happened next?
Well, I wrote him a letter, actually. I went to the Indian version of Kinko's and I had 1,000 copies made. And then I started sliding it under every door in the hotel.
No wonder your mom, poor woman, let you go. So
she
you put
is
1,000 copies under doors?
Yeah, and it turns out you're not allowed to do that in a hotel room.
But because you didn't know what room he was staying.
No, I had to go to every floor till the security. You eventually get the floor where the prime minister is. It's like, the president, they shut down the whole floor. And I'm holding the stack and I'm being like, well, listen, I'm Canadian. I'm just trying to get this under the door. The guy thought this was so amusing that he said, well, you should hold a press conference. The security guard, which probably they should say that. And back in the day, this was 30 years ago, before the internet was as ubiquitous, there was an actual bulletin board for the press. And I just put the letter up there and it said, I'm going to come back. And with 2 freed child slaves, we sat in the lobby of the hotel and they just told their stories to the waiting press corps that included CNN and BBC and all these things we didn't realize at the time.
Wow.
And so the guy who hosted me, named Kailash Satyarthi, who goes on to win the Nobel Peace Prize for his work kicking down doors, freeing children. We come back and start this small charity that in the years to follow, works with millions of kids and grows to 1,000 staff in 45 countries. And it was this surreal journey of started from that one trip and that small spark.
So, Craig, you mentioned Mother Teresa. Did you have any chance to hang out with her, do things with her, learn from her?
Oh, my goodness, yes. So I was at the Mother House. I had just had my 13th birthday, and I was so overwhelmed by this point. Like, I don't know what I expected on this trip, but this was, and I was this like lone white kid in the middle of the Mother House. So she actually walks up to me and she asks me what I'm doing there. And I start just talking to her, and she listens, and eventually, and this was not, I was probably blabbering, frankly, at this point, and eventually, her team comes and says, Teresa, she's very tired, we're nearing time to end, and she waves them off and pulls me aside, and we sit down on a bench and we just talk. And she tells me about her first moment encountering poverty in India and how overwhelming it was for her and why she chose her path and setting up the Sisters of Charity. I told her my journey here in this tiny nonprofit that I didn't know if it could really make a difference. She goes off, and I know your listeners can't, but I still, to this day, 30 years later, where I got 2 medals, one given to my wife, and the other one that Mother Teresa gave me, I still wear.
Oh, wow. And guess what I wear from the trip that you organized to India, blessed by the Dalai Lama, brought by his best friend, who's Canadian, Ken, right? So
I love it. I love it.
So wear it every day.
Well, my final exchange with Mother Teresa was as I was leaving. I looked at her, and I was at the door of the mother house at this point, and we had spoken far longer, and she was far kinder than she should have been with this random kid. And I just said, how do you do it? How do you not give up when there's so much poverty all around and you can't help every person? And she just looks at me and she says, you have to realize we can do no great things in life. We can only do small things with great love.
I love that. That's great. That's a great thing to be left with. Repeat it one more time. That's it. I want the listeners to hear that.
We can do no great things in life. We can only do small things with great love.
That's beautiful. That is very, very beautiful. Oh, now your mother is probably at home reading about you in the newspaper, right?
Oh, my mom was furious. Like, in a loving way, she was furious because we held this press conference. And I didn't tell her. Like, this was before cell phones. Like, I was using calling cards back in Asia. It was expensive. And so we hold this conference, and people just start calling the house. And I just keep traveling. Like, I had no idea. I didn't know you were supposed to stick around for the press conference afterwards. And, 2-3 days later, I call home. My mom is like apoplectic. She's like, you held a press conference in Asia? And then the prime minister, who originally wouldn't meet with me, now wants to meet with me, of course, because the press is hounding him. And the press keeps asking him, why hasn't met me? And he's saying that he can't figure out how to reach me in Asia. And of course, they think this is, ridiculous. Like,
so of course, the prime minister's office is calling your mother
to get the press off his back. And the press keep calling. The prime minister's office keeps calling. I'm just having fun traveling through Asia. I was in Pakistan at this point. And my mom's like, go meet the prime minister. Go do this interview. She actually said, do you know how this makes me sound as a mother that I don't know where my child is in Asia? Call more often. So, yeah, felt badly for that one.
And is that how Oprah found out about you? Did you reach out? Did she reach out to you? How do you end up as a teenager on Oprah, where I guess spontaneously she just blurted out that she was going to give you millions of dollars for what you wanted to do? Like, how did that happen?
Well, exactly. So I come back from this trip, and the next thing, testifying before congressional committees about child labor, showing these images of kids. And then the story keeps growing. Like, part of it was the novelty of a group of kids helping other kids. And part of it was, like, bear in mind, this was the mid-90s. It was a time where just globalization, all these changes, people were realizing, like, there's kids making these items in our supply chain. Like, it was just this awakening that was taking place. And so the phone rings at my house one day. It was one of Oprah's producers saying that they're doing a show on kids making a difference, and would I be one of a dozen kids? And it was just short 5-minute segment. And so each kid, because this is Oprah, gets a surprise. And my surprise was some other kid had heard about what we were doing, was inspired, and hands me a big novelty check. And that's supposed to be the end of the segment. And then Oprah, while I'm still on the couch, just looks at me, and she's just so blown away. And so she ends up pledging to support our work to the tune of north of $10 million, which, when you're a small fledgling children's charity, helps a lot. Except the next day, as you know, because we've had a few funny drinks on this one, her chief operating officer sits me down and says, we're not giving you this money. Are you kidding me? Like, you're not writing a check to a group of teenagers. You guys don't have your driver's license. We're not giving you millions of dollars to go run these projects around the world. And he actually turns to me, and because I'm pleading at this point, saying, you got it, please. And he says, I'll tell you what, kid, I'll give you the money if you can answer 3 questions. Number 1, how do you currency hedge? I kid you not. Number 2, what's the fiduciary oversight mechanisms you have in place? Number 3, because we were building schools, he's like, do you have paraseismic engineering models? And my honest to God answer was, I don't know what those words mean, but if you define them, we might have them. And he was like, kid, if you don't know these words, you don't have it. And he was like, he was being a little tough around the edge, but he was also making a point. It's like, you have no idea what you're doing. You shouldn't be getting. And he sits me down. He's like, listen, okay, I'll tell you what, we're going to fulfill this pledge over a long horizon, but I want you here every month with me, every quarter in front of Oprah's board. And we're going to spend millions more because we're going to give you the best lawyers, the best accountants, the best processes and engineers and operations. Because once Oprah's brand's attached to something, we got to make sure it's legit. So it was this incredible, like I have an actual MBA, but it was literally the most extraordinary MBA in the world from Oprah. She is such an incredible operator. She's still, we've worked with, as you mentioned, a lot of extraordinary individuals. She was one of, and remains one of the most extraordinary operators.
What do you think was it? I mean, she's in front of thousands of people all the time asking for money or this or that. What was it about this particular emotion that you created that she's like, I want to do this? And then how did her philanthropy, change going forward after that moment? And what did you how were you involved in that?
Yeah, well, so it's an interesting question because she had never done a big international gift ever before. It was her first one, which is wild if you think about it. And on a group of kids that she decided to do this with. I don't know. And this is why I feel like I know you well enough. And I'm always a straight shooter. I don't know what it was about that moment. I don't know why it touched something in her in such a profound way to the extent that it did, and why she chose to do the first international. She knew, I talked to her enough about it. She knew she was going to get flack for it because there's a lot of needs in America. We do a lot of work at home in America too, but she still wanted to do something global in that way.
And your focus at that time was mainly Asia, India, Pakistan, Africa.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we ended up building, 68 schools with her around the world. We ended up doing countless projects. In fact, in the years that followed, and for 5 shows that we did together, when she would just call us when something would emerge. Like some viewers might remember, Southeast Asia had a horrible tsunami where hundreds of thousands of people were killed. And so, Nate Berkus, the famed designer, before he had his own show, was on Oprah's show, and he lost his partner. So Oprah calls us, and your cell phone rings one day, and it's Oprah saying, I need a favor. I want you to do something to honor Nate's partner. I want you to fly out to Asia and build a school there. Of course, Miss Winfrey. So we started getting these phone calls from her. And at one point, she calls us into her office in Chicago. And I still call her Miss Winfrey. It's funny enough, all these years later, as I said, I caught myself saying that. So we would absolutely call her Miss Winfrey, obviously, at the time. And she calls us in. It's my brother and I. We do this together. And she sat us down and she said, I would like a favor. We're like, of course, Miss Winfrey, you changed our lives. Like, what, anything. And she was moving from grant giving. She was always very generous and funding others, to wanting to design and build her own project. And she had a very specific idea what she wanted it to be. And it was Ambassadors, Oprah's Ambassadors. It was this program she wanted to design in the US to get American students involved in service, and candidly, especially African-American students. And if they got involved in service, they would connect to Africa and they would get scholarships. And she wanted to, she knew exactly what she wanted. And no other charity was doing this. And so she wanted it custom built for her. And she had funded our back end. And so she trusted us and seen our admin. And she said, I want you to carve out some of your team and quietly run this for her as basically a bespoke project. And
that's not something you were doing at the time.
No, actually, I don't know any charity that suddenly takes a group of its team and says, I'll do whatever you want to build for you. And so she changed our lives. And so we said, of course, Miss Winfrey. And we ended up building that. And the world saw her shows, but quietly it was our team involved, fulfilling her vision, always her vision, but quietly our team on the implementation side. And it was this incredible learning experience. And then it unlocked an awareness for us that even, Oprah, as brilliant as an operator as she is so busy, or there's reasons why she needs sometimes assistance to move from ideation to implementation, because so often people want to do good in the world, but they just they're busy. They'll say, I'll do it later. And often that leads to missed opportunities to create real impact.
I want you to go through what you did all over the United States and bringing young people together in massive stadiums and music. What did you do for people that may not remember that? But walk us through what you did, how many people you got together, what impact you made on that campaign. Because I think that really put you on the map.
Well, so the first charity, the one that I was talking about, we started was called Free the Children. Okay. And then the second charity you're talking about, the we.org, where that all came to be, well, it's probably worth just explaining the origin for a second, because it was this incredible conversation. The phone rings at my house still, it's like 16, 17. And I'll never forget, it was this very British, very formal sounding voice that basically said, calling from the office of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. And this was the Dalai Lama's personal, or chief of staff. And they said, can I speak to Craig Kielburger's chief of staff? And my mother answered the phone. Of course, she still loves telling the story over the Christmases just to tease me about it. Cause she's like, yes, I was chief of staff to you when I answered the phone. She called to the backyard or something where I was playing and get invited to this gathering in, Sweden, the Raoul Wallenberg Symposium, and the Dalai Lama was hosting this gathering of individuals to be locked in a room for an entire week and to discuss one question. Like in our TikTok era, you could hardly imagine that. I'd love it. And the one question was, what is the greatest challenge facing our world today?
And how many people were there with you?
It was this intimate gathering, but it was an incredible, Desmond Tutu's there, Arthur Schlesinger Jr.'s there, Brundtland's there. If you are a fan of icons of social change, this was so they designed this to represent the diversity of the world. Men and women, every continent inhabited was represented, different faith traditions. And they realized at the last minute they had no young people. The youngest was in their 50s. And so I get this phone call to represent the youth of the world, which,
great.
Token young people. I'll take it. I'll happily take the spot. And so I got put into this room with this incredible group and just listened as they discussed this for a week. And they debated all the topics, peace in the Middle East, nuclear proliferation, everything you'd imagine. And eventually, Dalai Lama opens the door. It's kind of like, the white puff with the Vatican. They open the door and there's all the press waiting and they announce the findings. The single greatest challenge facing our world is we're raising generation after generation of passive bystanders.
Passive bystanders.
Yeah. That we're so, if you think about it, you're a dad has 4 kids. We walk past the homeless in our streets. We change the channel on genocide and war. It takes a certain psyche in our world today that we have become so immune.
TikTok videos. Yeah. It's like scroll. What's next?
Yes. And so at the time we finished this gathering and I walk up to His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and I say, this was extraordinary. What are we going to do about it? And he asked me, what are you going to do about it, of course? And so we set up this thing, this we.org that you mentioned, whose mission was involving young people in service. And so for all the American listeners, we teamed up with the College Board, which, all the AP courses and SATs, and we built this parallel version of AP where you can do your AP courses through service. Learn your art by doing work on mental health, raising awareness, your Spanish by helping a new immigrant, or, biology by testing water in your community. And so you do this in-school service. It gets validated by the teachers. So we're the only ones who can validate service on your transcript when you apply to college in America. Built this giant program with, millions of teachers involved in AP and pre-AP and other programs. And then we would do this reward where you earn your way to these stadiums. And we filled 130 stadiums with students like Wembley in the UK.
130 around the world.
Yes. And they would earn their way through service. And everyone would say the young people are apathetic. No, so they'd do this entire year of service and they would be celebrated and they'd hear Malala on stage or, Gorbachev or Jane Goodall or Elie Wiesel or Branson. And they would also hear legitimately Bieber and J-Lo and Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez and all these ones to celebrate. And young people would stand up on stage and they would talk about their incredible service work. So they did 40 million volunteer hours verified of service. They fundraised millions and millions of dollars for different charities. But most importantly, they were not passive bystanders. We wanted to make sure that they saw the world and they were a change agent.
And what year was this?
I want to say about 2000 and about 2006, 2007. I remember this because when 2008, 2009 rolled around, it was tough financially as a charity, but we said, my God, this is when it's necessary more than ever before. And we ran it just until 2020. And obviously COVID was what stopped us in 2020. We had our last one at Wembley in March 2020, which is crazy to say.
Wow.
But that was just up to the end. And it was this incredible, like ABC and CBS would broadcast it. It's the second largest charity in the world, actually on Facebook at the time for followers. Like it built up this giant following of young people.
And what was the impact that you made if you had to measure? And I know that as a nonprofit, you would measure like year to year, like what was the global impact, do you think?
Well, it's interesting because it depends how you define measurement. So most people would assume our measurement was the dollars we raised for hundreds of different charities. And it was hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Some people assume it's the hours, 40 million hours of service, et cetera. The most interesting measurement that we ever did was longitudinal studies. So we teamed up with this group called Mission Measurement, where we handed them our database. And I think they took about 4,000 names and they randomly contacted graduates and they polled them, and they found out years after the program how many were volunteering, casting ballots, giving to charity. And the stats were extraordinary. I remember it was about 89% had voted in the last federal election, which for young people is extraordinary.
So you developed a muscle of civic service, engagement.
Exactly.
And this wasn't only the US, it was global, right?
So I still run into individuals all the time. Like, for example, I was just at the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth, which is the kind of shareable arm of MasterCard in New York 2 days ago. And like the head of it is this incredible guy. And he like grew up and went through our events and like had this incredible stadium experience. And it's amazing just, seeing there was a generation of young people who grew up through these programs. And that was our commitment to the Dalai Lama all those years ago to try to inspire service.
Wow. And now tell me, Legacy Plus, and I want to get into our partnership in a little bit, but at what point did it become that these individuals, like, I worked 8 years with Richard Branson's charity, Virgin Unite, and, with Gene, and he was actually inspired by the Dalai Lama in South Africa, sitting at his feet. And it was, 2001, I think, that he decided to use his convening power and his brand and his company and him to do what he could to change the world and inspire others to do the same. But as you said, you're busy running 100 corporate global companies to all of a sudden say, I'm going to make a difference in this or that or the other, requires a lot of attention and focus, whether it's Oprah or Tony Robbins. Or how did you first say, like, hey, there's a big opportunity if we team up with these type of people who have the money, the brand, we could then design whatever it is that they're passionate about. But I know that you bring in a menu of services that it's like, oh my God, there's like 15 different things you got to really think about, and they could either do it themselves or have you do it for them.
Beautifully said. That's exactly what we do. And to answer your question, where was the origin of it? It was Oprah. Like when we created this custom program for her, eventually her show came to an end and we had, a couple dozen people running this program for her. And we thought, do we just transfer them back in? Do we let them go? What do we do with them? And then we realized there is a need. And candidly, when you don't care, who gets credit and you're just willing to support and serve, like there's a lot of opportunity to do good in the world. And exactly what you mentioned became our aha moment, that we live in a world where so many people have passion for what they want to do. And there's often no shortage of resources. Like, we're in this boom economy in many ways for many. And they often don't know where to start. So they'll put it in a donor advised fund, or they'll say, I'll wait until I'm later. Or even this is a generational difference today. I find that 20, 30 years ago, you'd have an exit and then people would do philanthropy. But today you have your exit, you kind of want to step back up it again. Like a lot of people go for 2 or 3 rounds. And often what's holding them back from creating impact isn't the vision. It isn't the resources, but it's they don't want to deal with a 3 a.m. phone call. They don't want to deal with the execution. They don't want to have to deal with. And when we remove those barriers and we say, great, we'll help you design your theory of change, your model. We'll help you build the brand and implement it. We'll help you do the full program implementation. We will custom design it, boots on the ground, whatever's necessary, into the schools, into the communities, delivering the program. We'll ensure it's turnkey for you, and it's your vision. We have found some incredible individuals have put up their hand and said, I'm in. And we get a chance to fulfill those visions and build incredible movements together.
So I want you to go through some examples. I'll get to some of the R360 members you're helping in a moment. But if we think of some big names like, okay, last few years ago, we talked about, the Dalai Lama that was going to give you the intellectual property because wanted to use his voice globally with children around the world to inspire them to be kinder and peaceful and things like that. You've worked now with Madonna, you're working with Tony Robbins. Like, what are you doing for them? And do they have already this is what we want to do, or I want to do something, but I don't really know. And then you kind of help flesh them out what that's going to be.
Everyone's different. So I'll just pick a few that you had mentioned. So the Dalai Lama already had established the Dalai Lama Center and the desire to focus on social emotional learning. So we are a secular organization, and, candidly, God bless the billion Buddhists in the world, but I'm not one of them. So it might be surprising to find that we're involved as the back end for the Dalai Lama Center. But the core values of compassion, of empathy, of service, of engagement, said absolutely, we'll get behind those secular values to see that come alive in social emotional learning. So we are now programming that, working with about 90,000 educators across North America and putting social emotional learning programs into curriculum. And, it's amazing to see kids who just want to make a difference. And then let me pick a different one. Tony Robbins. Listen, I grew up loving Tony Robbins. I listened to his, as I said with him.
I did the firewalk twice.
Yes. Well, I grew up with the cassettes and then the CDs, the live events. So it was a ton of fun being in Tony's basement, going down. He has this oh, God bless him. It's so hilarious. He has a slide to get from the main floor into his basement. It's like his little man cave. And so going down a slide with Tony Robbins into his basement, it's hilarious. And just sitting with him and saying, well, what are your passions? And he says, well, I've got two. Kind of number one is all the stuff I'm already doing. He has this incredible set of initiatives focused on 100 billion meals that he's giving out. And so we want to step up and help make sure that he goes well beyond that number. So we're going to, it's branding, it's introductions, it's helping them, build and scale the incredible work that he's already doing. And he's doing work in human trafficking and food security, et cetera. And the second part is what he hasn't yet built. And that's where, to your point, not everyone has the vision fully baked. So we would sit for hours in conversations and figure out what inspires you and what do you want your legacy to be? And where do you think your greatest fulcrum point is to really create exponential change and interest? And how much time are you willing to commit? Or what are the resources you're willing to commit? And we walk through these questions and we sit as a family. So Sage, his wife, is most people don't realize equally extraordinary in her own way. And so you have these conversations and what eventually emerges is a vision. And 9 times out of 10, the most interesting thing is when I'm in conversations with people, they'll think too small. And this is, and I'm not saying Tony Robbins is a huge thinker. So let me be very clear. His holiness is, Madonna, all these individuals, but they even often think too small. And other individuals, the CEOs we work with. And the reason being is because they say, I don't have the time. I can't build. And then we say, remove every constraint, remove every limitation. If you didn't have to do it yourself, if you didn't have to build it yourself, heck, in some cases you don't even have to fund it by yourself. Let's just talk about the impact we're trying to drive. And then we can take that vision and often 10x it in what it's seeking to do. And then we can help unlock that when we can bring our team and others to help make that come alive.
And then what are you doing with Madonna?
So Madonna's got some incredible work taking place. So she, of course, is deeply focused on Malawi, where she has done community development work for years, education, healthcare, incredible outreach. But we're now building something new with her, which I can't yet announce because she's going to be one to announce it. But like even Madonna is continuing to always reinvent and build in incredible ways. It's one of the most amazing things about individuals who, even if you're Madonna, who thinks that, there's kind of you fit into a box, people are always looking for new ways to create impact. But she's incredible. One of my other personal favorites we're doing right now is Martin Luther King III. You've, of course, know the King family, the son of the Nobel laureate, the iconic civil rights leader. We have this massive campaign right now on 100 million hours of service for the 100th anniversary of Dr. King. So we've got, MLB and NBA and NFL. If you tune into the games, you'll see public service announcements. We've got tons of nonprofits joining, Boys and Girls Club and all these cool groups. We've got an online platform you can put where you live in and your postal code and causes you care about, find thousands of service opportunities ready for you. Another cool one we're doing is with Hollywood studios. We're doing a cool one with Netflix and Amazon and NBC Universal and Brian Grazer. It's called Real Genius. And it's to make learning fun. So for all the parents out there who can't get their kids pumped up on learning, it's a free platform that takes Hollywood film and matches it with the best teachers and content in America. So imagine learning, physics with clips from Fast and the Furious, or learning, perseverance with Apollo 13 and the incredible, Tom Hanks film. So so we're a foundry, basically. We build all these charitable projects for incredible partners and then get a chance to spin them up and support them, sustain them, grow them to create impact for people around the world.
Wow. Well, we obviously really appreciated working with you because, and I know you've also worked with Richard Branson's family, with Holly and others. So, and it's really, like you said, pushing them. So what are some of the things that you've done with some of our members? I know, and you've been working with Troy in Miami and Kat in Chicago. So what are you spinning up for them?
Well, firstly, I got to say a shout out because there's a lot for listeners who I know you probably know R360, and in the headline about it, obviously is based on a certain financial level of success to be an R360 member. And you can't ignore that's a fairly critical component. But the part that I've always found amazing, having worked with different organizations out there, is I've never met an organization that has the same intentional focus on impact. Which is just a kudos to you, Charlie. Like, I got to say it publicly so everyone can hear it. To build it and to encourage. And I love how in the meetings and on the annual gatherings, you're always saying, yes, we're, about
3 billion is the number. We want to touch 3 billion people
love that.
For humanity to heal our planet. And I can't do it alone. It has to come through the power of the community. And they can't do it alone because it's not their world. And the thinking, what I love about your story is, it's like, wait a minute, if like a 12-year-old did this and then the things that you've like, it's a little fantastical. Like you could touch so many kids, and they have a lot of our members, 19 didn't go to college, 12 didn't graduate from high school, but half of them are billionaires. And generosity of spirit is something they would love to give to create an impact, but it has to be something that they and their family are passionate about for some reason, taking plastics out of the ocean or helping foster kids or something that there's an emotional attachment that then what is the process to convince them that, whatever it is they're thinking about could be 100x bigger?
So Charlie, I promise to answer that question. And I'll also answer the previous one I didn't answer about what we're doing with Troy and Kat. But I got to ask you a question because I actually don't know the answer to this. And I think it would be great for your listeners to know. When you built R360, you included this as a cornerstone, a requirement that anyone stepping into the community has to find their own path. And so they do the development work and they help build themselves in this way. What was it in your story? What was it in your origin? What was it in your formative life that you basically said, you picked the harder route, because it would be easy to say this is just like, about investing and money. You actually said this is a gating requirement. And I know you've turned out members who haven't stepped up in that way.
73 families have been turned down, including 9 billionaires. So it's not about the money, but, our logo is black and white. Every day you make decisions that take you to the light or they keep you in the darkness being, the ego and everything, and the light being your heart. And it's very important that, your life is going to be measured not by all the money that you have, the magazine covers, the books, the accomplishments. Your life will always be measured by how many hearts you touch and what you leave behind. So, our children are the seeds that we leave in the world, and my success will be measured by the success of my children and my grandchildren. And 5-6 generations down, are they still have that sense of contribution? But I grew up about, a block away from a Catholic church. I was raised Catholic when I was younger, and I wanted to be an altar boy, and they wouldn't let me because they would only hire or bring on the poor kids. So I had, like you, I had to just keep going. And for 8 years, that's what I did. My dad was a doctor. He wanted me to be a doctor, but I wanted to serve my country and fly airplanes. So I had this service gene. And then I went to work for, 6 presidents now of both parties. So education was my real kind of passion. And I've done a lot. State Board of Education. I've been the head of the Air Force Academy Board of Visitors when they had a sexual assault scandal. So I figure, I'm blessed with gifts. And, Matthew 25, I talk about, it's on my website, that, we're bestowed with talents, and you have to have the courage to be self-aware that you have a gift that 99% of the population doesn't have. And your duty and obligation is to use that gift for the benefit of others, not only your immediate family, but others. So I always had this thing of whatever job I was in, I was spending probably 20-30% of my time outside of work on, national board of the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, junior achievement. And I just figured, hey, I'll go in there and be a change agent, and I get energy from that. So R360 was, I had this vision that I had to touch 3 billion people on a planet, and to be a bridge between the spiritual and the material world. And
beautiful.
And I've converted to Judaism, and I have a teacher in Israel, and that happened a while back. Behind me,
that's fascinating.
Yeah, 72 names of God in Hebrew are on that painting, and I meditate to one of them every day.
Beautiful.
And I'm probably one of the few people that have read cover to cover not only the Bible, but the Torah and the Quran. And we all come from that, 4 billion people on the planet come from Abraham, and there's a cave of the patriarchs in the West Bank. It's the only religious site controlled by all 3 faiths.
Amazing.
Because the patriarchs are there. And I spend a lot of time thinking, there's a book that
I love you reaching for the listeners. He's literally reaching for the book of Genesis.
The book of Genesis. And, Abraham, God said, follow me, and he followed. Yes. And I got that message loud and clear at some point, and R360 falls into the gather 1,000 superheroes from around the world that have created great wealth. The average R360 members created 600 million in wealth, 80% first-time entrepreneurs, immigrants to the land of wealth. And it's like, how can you create a legacy that you can really be proud of? A legacy for your parents, your children, your grandparents.
Yes.
How can you ensure that 150 years from now, the blessings that you've created are going to inspire your heirs that you're never going to meet? Because, we create a film. We have an award-winning filmmaker, and the first 3 years they're members, we create a 45-minute film on how they
Oh, I've
created their
seen them.
wealth,
I
their
love that.
values.
Yes.
But then what I
Mhm.
want to do is the last 15 minutes is once you help some of our members and they can then get feedback from the people that have helped them. That is where we then attach it so that many, many years in the future, they'll be able to see that. We have one of our members passed, Rosie Behar. And if you go to her cemetery, there's a QR code and you can pull up a 5-minute video where she's challenging and inspiring her heirs to live with the values that she and her husband and family tried to inspire in their own children. And a big part of that was changing the world, giving a percentage of, tithing, reverse tithing. We have members that give 90% of their income away, not 10%.
Yes.
And, we have religions from all faiths, and we believe wealth is more than money. So it's not only financial, it's intellectual, social, human, emotional, and spiritual. So, but what I like is that we have these entrepreneurs too that have solved some of the world's most intractable problems commercially. Yes. But it's like, hey, why don't you focus on taking plastics out of the ocean? Why don't you focus on human poverty or sickness, things that they could do? Because quite frankly, I was with one of our members yesterday who's put $50 million of his own money to start a school in Miami Beach. And he has 2 girls and he says, no, I don't want my girls to go to college. In fact, college is a waste of time. I want them to have an experience. And he's creating a K through 12 with AI and robotics and self-sustaining living and growing your own food and stuff like that he wants to create good humans, not
beautiful.
Like he says parents focus like, hey, if my kids come in here where they get to Harvard, it's like, that's not our school. Sorry. Go to this school, go to this school. If you want your kid to be a good human, this is a good school for them. We're not about all that stuff. I ran on a peer-to-peer group for social entrepreneurs, about 1,000 social entrepreneurs in 34 countries. And being in that organization for 7 years, it really opened my eyes to the level of work, detail, in order to do the things that one has to do, not to show up as the white American savior that's going to come in and how to, you've written a lot of best-selling books, get the word out there, how to create a platform, raise money, and do something sustainable that's not a flash in the pants.
Yeah, there were a lot of layers to that question, but how I interpret the beginning of that question is to do the work, as you said. Like, we've got to do the work. I think it's an interesting question why people engage in this work. And there's almost a preamble that we do with most individuals before leaping into changing the world and making a difference. We actually do a lot of personal work with them. And people are sometimes surprised by this. And Charlie, you know this, that we built a community where we work with individuals and we help them on their personal development journey. We help them even in their physical health, because I actually find is that unless you can help people meet what they need, unless you could fill their cup, they won't overflow enough to actually be of service to others in that way. So we do, for example, with families and individuals, we'll help bring them on retreats into centers. Like we have a center in the Amazon basin where they do this incredible work that takes place for personal development in the Amazon basin.
I will be there with my son in September.
Yes, we're so excited. And so it's like 600 acres, and it's this incredible rewilding Amazon site where we rewild animals, and we spend time with the indigenous leaders and the community leaders, the traditional blessings, the ways of life in the communities. And something that is legal in Ecuador, I know not in America, so some people may choose or not choose, but one thing that the local community does, because it's part of their tradition, is they invite our guests if they want to take part in things like ayahuasca and some of the traditional plant-based medicines in the regions. And when they're led by a local shaman with the open sky, and as their families have done for generations upon generations upon generations through these led journeys, we find that a number of individuals have this clearer idea of what they want to do with their lives and what the impact is they want to create.
And I'm a big believer, and we have a partnership with the John Hopkins Psychedelic Research Unit, who's been doing this since 1999. And we have probably a good, probably 40 members out of a couple hundred that have a lot of experience. And we even have a circle. It's called the Mysticism Circle.
Yes.
There's always a medical doctor involved. And I know you have the wonderful Tim Cook, who's fabulous.
In-house medical doctor, absolutely. Personal physician to 2 heads of state who loves to oversee this for your members and anyone who participates.
My wife and I have been to Toronto, and you guys have some amazing facilitators. So it's like, hey, this stuff is not like, when you were in high school or college. This is hard work. It's an inner journey and inner work where you're trying to rewire your neural pathways.
Yes.
And I always tell people, it's like, have you ever been, skiing and you see these, those ruts is what keeps you tied to your ego. And if you want to be tied to your heart, you need snow to go through those paths. Neural networks are wide open. And, I always like to say that, Leonardo da Vinci once said that the longest journey you'll ever take is the 18 inches from your head to your heart. And
beautiful. It's
not easy. I mean, it's a path that I started on about 15 years ago, and it took a long time to be a different person. And it's not easy. And especially when you have trauma from your childhood and you're just stuck in these areas. But our members get inspired by, you came, you told your story. Other people, we brought, Scott Harrison from Charity Water and what Scott was able to do. And there's like, oh my God, guys, like 20 million people in the world have water. I met Scott at Necker Island. We were doing something with Richard Branson, and he was barely a $1 million nonprofit. And now he's 120. And I saw what he's been able to do over probably 12 years since I met him. And, like bringing clean water to 20 million people in the world. Oprah supports him as well, as on his leadership council. But you inspire people, and then they need the tools, because especially our members, they don't want to do something half-ass or fail, or like, oh, I got to hire a team. Like, do I have to have like a huge staff? And in a lot of cases, that's where you come in and make those decisions for them, right?
Well, and get to help fulfill their vision. Like an example, I know you had asked me earlier to share, and I love our journey, but to circle back to that, like Kat and Brian Miller, they're extraordinary. And, as you said, Chicago-based, deeply philanthropic. And what I love about where we get to serve Kat's vision is it comes from such a deep place. She just, and she's very open about all of this, Harvard MBA, crushing it, all the great success, a mom, a wife, a successful business person. And she talks about the mental health challenges and how, you're not supposed to have those type of doubts or challenges when you are quote unquote that successful. And what's so amazing about her courage is that she breaks through that and focuses on helping women and girls with the unique supports that they need in community, in resources, in conversations, peer supports, and created something called This Way Up. So to answer your question, how this works, like we sat down with her and she said, this is what I want to do. I have this vision for, I want to ground in her own personal experience. And she had this extraordinary gift, not just her dollars, and obviously the family is very generous, but as her daughter was graduating from high school and preparing to go on to college, she wanted to make sure that she as Kat could channel her support in her community in a tangible way that made a difference. So we've, over countless lunches and brainstormings and looking at where she can provide the greatest value, helped to co-create this with incredible partners from Mental Health America and, organizations that now curated experts. So if you go to This Way Up, her website, you'll find incredible mental health resources, interviews, documentaries, live meetups, all of this that she has created with this incredible community focused on women and girls, using her personal lived experience, her personal time as a mentor, along with others who have deep clinical knowledge, and her personal resources. It's an amazing example of someone who could easily just, frankly, be playing golf. No disrespect to those who play golf, but she is living her best life, she talks about, at this stage of her highest service to the world. And it's a privilege to work with her on it.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, you also get to work with Troy, who I've interviewed, and he's
Troy's amazing.
Quite a character.
Yes.
Wife grew up not too far from where I'm at in St. Augustine. But what were they thinking of? Because I know he's involved in entrepreneurship and other things, but what did they focus on?
So Troy's brilliance is going upstream, and he always wants, it's the old adage, you give a person a fish, feed them for a day, teach them how to fish, feed them for a lifetime. And for a lot of individuals, the most important art of that fishing is finding a job and employment and career. And it's tough these days. As any parent knows, like AI is creating a lot of displacements. Young people are struggling to get their first employment. There's a lot of confusing messages. Where do you go? What do you do? Remember 20 years ago or 15 years ago, be a coder was the safest thing. And then it was be a lawyer. And it's like, gosh.
That didn't work out.
No. And as you said, there is an irony to, how many of your members never went to college, and lo and behold. And so what his great unlock and his realization was, all of these young people across America are somewhat dependent on the quality of their guidance counselor to figure this out, which is a little bit hit and miss, let's be candid, depending on the school. And how do we make sure that every young person has a clarity of their pathway? And this was his brilliance. Of course, like all members, we had chances to make that brilliance come alive. But My Dream, My Path, he actually created the name in this case. I love it. Because every young person needs the dream. They need the role modeling for what their career should be. And then they need the path. How do I tangibly get there? So really it's three parts. The first is the top of the funnel, where you bring in individuals who see, creators and extraordinary individuals who get you fired up and excited, and you land on the website and you're filling out a series of questions. And these questionnaires help underscore what are your unique gifts and talents and how you can make a difference. The next is a series of videos that introduce you to these different careers so you can tangibly see what do they involve. And then the last is these discussion cards that get very tactical. What do I earn? How do I pursue this? What do I need to study? How the things that are going to help you decide, is this really the job I want? Is this really the career I want? So imagine if you're a high school student, or again, for all the parents out there who, young people figure out their unique gifts and talents, phase one. Phase two, they get inspired by the smorgasbord of all the opportunities out there and they narrow it down, unique to them. In phase three, they get really tactical. How do I go from A to B? How do I find my steps? What do I study? How do I get there? And imagine, again, I look at both Kat and Troy as just two of your members. These are just two R360 members. But the first one, what a difference we're making here in the lives of hundreds of thousands of women and young women when it comes to mental health. And the second one, this is something that can reach, it's entirely online based, so limitless number of students who can help identify what their path should be. And instead of, going to college and struggling once or twice, changing the major, having debt, dropping out, not knowing what their steps are, this gives them that tangible journey so that they know in advance where they can succeed unique to their gifts and talents. Those are just two of your members. Never mind so many others who've done such incredible gifts to so many around the world.
And what advice do you have for young people that could be listening, that maybe they're stuck in a job that they're not really happy with, but they're just earning enough to basically cover themselves? But what they would really like to do is apply their time to something where they're really helping others and actually making a living from it?
Well, firstly, I will shamelessly say we are recruiting. So
Oh,
for the young people out there who have
do you
with
have to be Canadian, or can you be in
no,
the
you
US?
kidding me? No, we got offices in San Francisco and Atlanta and different places. But all of these members I mentioned, you kidding me? We got to build websites for all of them. We got to keep, live events going on for all of them. We got to, all of these visionaries that you've recruited, you get them fired up on big visions.
What's your website?
Legacyplus.org. We are growing. We're recruiting.
.org. Okay.
But I put that out there, all jokes aside, because I think a lot of young people feel you've got to pick in an age of scarcity. And right now, we've been almost sold this message of AI displacement scarcity. If you want and have a great skill, right now, we are bringing web designers on who are building the websites for My Dream, My Path, or for This Way Up. We've got videographers who are creating the film content. We've got coders who are doing some incredible interfaces. We've got psychologists who are creating, and these are just for these 2 projects. We've got teachers and groups who are working with teachers, recruiting teachers. So there's so many great innovations and social entrepreneurship pathways out there to do good. So, but to get very tactical, for a young person out there who wants to build something, so we're a foundry. We help people build things from, 0 to 1 million, in what they're seeking to do. I would say if you got a cause out there you're dreaming, first, get a really good business plan, because we're a big believer that you got to, put it into running. 2, get a great board of directors to help advise you. 3, it's all about the financial management of it and, the P&L systems and how to grow. So I now have the pleasure to coach a lot of young entrepreneurs who want to build, especially mission-driven, for-profit, not-profit, doesn't matter to me, but as long as it's got a core mission to it. And I feel like those skills, those fundamental skills, to your point, aren't taught in schools. So we bring young people in all the time, and we help mentor and coach them and support them, and they intern and they help out and they have these great skills and they go back out and change the world.
And I just don't think people realize, even in the US, that the nonprofit sector in the US is 10% of the economy.
Well said. There's 1.9 million nonprofits.
Yeah.
Huge.
And people don't think hey, what are you can go into a database and see, hey, I want to look for nonprofits that are within a 25-mile radius of where I live, and there might be something. And you go to the website, you call them, you apply, and all of a sudden you just have to focus. And especially, if you can live your purpose, but also bring your passion to work. Purpose is more what we were talking about before. What are your God-given gifts that you can use for the benefit of others? Passion is the things that fuel you and give you energy. And if you can get up in the morning and do both of those things, then that's kind of the win-win.
Absolutely. And in this ability or definition of purpose, I get so many young people ask me how do I find my purpose in life? It's it's almost kind of sold these days as must do. And I've often said to young people, at this point, your purpose is just find your purpose.
Exactly.
You don't need to be overwhelmed by it. Your purpose is to take the time and to find what are your gifts and talents. Your point, how will you contribute to the world around you? Do the inner work, do the outer work, and to be of true service.
I'm looking for there it is. I got this in your office.
Oh, I love it. I'm so
Toronto,
curious.
From your guy.
Ikigai. Yes, of course. The reason for being. Yes.
Yes. So, and it's, what do you love?
Yes.
What are you good at? What does the world need? What could you get paid for? That's at that intersection of vocation, profession, passion, mission. I got that from a good clinician scientist that's now working for you in Toronto. And I have it up there as a reminder,
Well, and Charlie, another way, and I know you're as we talked about what we do with your members, R360, another thing we of course do with a whole bunch of your members is unlimited life, which, and it's interesting because that's where you got that from, which is so often people, and this will, again, we're a foundry, we build things. One of the things that we built is really focused on the self, to refill yourself, and then to be of service to the world. And I find that people burn out otherwise, if they haven't really done the work to find their purpose, or if they're not taking care of themselves enough. So with these wildly successful individuals, we'll often start them on a journey where one of the initiatives we've launched, Unlimited Life, has biohacking and longevity medicine and all around fulfillment. And it takes care of the individual. They go on this holistic journey for a full year. They have, take care of the medical testing. They take care of their supplements. They take care of their self-care. They take care of all the greatest biohacks. And then they have all this energy and then they lean into purpose. And I find that, when we talk about helping members on their journey, sometimes people are so depleted that they're not able to be of service to the world. They're exhausted. They're burnt out.
I agree. And tell us about your partnership with Dave Asprey, who, I've been very impressed with, and he's kind of the father of biohacking.
Well, he literally invented the term biohacking. So there was this aha moment that after 25 years in the nonprofit world, 25 years of, frankly, sometimes burning ourselves out, 25 years of sometimes sitting with people going, well, we could talk about changing the world, but they're barely holding on themselves. These are some of the most successful, wealthy individuals, but they are just at the edge. That we've actually said, you know what, before we can ask of people to be of service to the world, we have to give. We have to support them on their journey. And so we created this idea called Unlimited Life, and it was a partnership of 3 groups coming together. To your point, Dr. Tim Cook is this rock star. I know a lot of people probably know his work. Again, personal physician to 2 heads of state. He has been one of the greatest experts in longevity medicine. And for a long time, he's been helping people with kind of more of the conventional medicine, if I could phrase it that way, just, helping them really that extend their lives. Then we spent time with Dave Asprey, who's someone we've, to your point, known and admired, 4 #1 New York Times bestselling books, this incredible inventor, the term biohacker, this tech entrepreneur who really invested and built this out as a meaningful community, all evidence-based, and how to fuel people with the energy side. And then my brother, Mark, and I, and again, 25 plus years in the nonprofit world, have been helping connect people with their purpose. And sometimes as we help people do good in the world and help people fill who they are, as I mentioned, we noticed being a little burnt out. And so we said, well, what if we can layer these 3 components together? What if we can give longevity to give you the time, biohacking to give you the energy, and fulfillment to really give you that connection and that purpose to bring it all together? And so it became this very unique batch of skills where we work with people over a 12-month period.
And the optional taste of ayahuasca if you want to.
That's what we bring, 100%.
And go to a different level.
I will say, so part of what we do on the fulfillment side is we have an incredible team that works with individuals. We have psychologists, and we have got a death doula, which I know will scare some people when you hear about this, but is a person who helps people at the time of the end of their lives. And she has a very candid conversation, says, I've held hands with people who passed. Let me tell you their regrets, their hopes, their dreams. I think everyone should have a conversation with her at some point in their lives because it realizes what's really important. Yeah. We've got coaches who support people like, as you know, Dr. David Baum, who's been on your podcast, 2 PhDs and works with Nobel laureates. We've got ayahuasca experts and, plant-based medicine people who help people on their journey. And we've got incredible coaches who, like Celine Cousteau, of course, of the famous Cousteau family, who help people deal with the baggage, the good, the bad that we inherit, the trauma. And so all of this comes together where we work with individuals, and step by step, we find that often we've got to candidly reconstruct them on this burnt out treadmill that is life. And when their health, their physical health comes back together, and when they're biohacking, suddenly they feel like they're sleeping through the night. They're not stressed out. They're able to manage what they're eating. They suddenly feel like they have this energy. Then we sit down. We're patient. Then we sit down and say, now let's have the conversation of how you want to be living your true purpose in life and what you can do to be of the greatest possible impact in the world. Because you can't get blood from a stone. You got to let people fill themselves first, and then they can be these great visionaries, entrepreneurs of service to the world. And it's been really amazing because, I came from the nonprofit world where it's all about, service, but you got to refill the cup. And when a cup flows over again, then you can be of service. And we've seen this just such a beautiful transformation for individuals on their life journey. And people who in the nonprofit world suddenly now have the physical well-being, the for-profit world, they found that purpose. It comes together, that biohacking plus longevity medicine plus fulfillment, in a way that I've just never seen anyone do it before. And so it was such a great learning experience for us.
Well, you've met my son, you've met one of my daughters.
Yes,
I'm curious, what are your kids like? How old are they? And what would you do if at 12 they said, Dad, I want to go to China or to save the world?
I hear you. So I've got 3 boys. I am married to the most amazing woman in the entire world. So she is a psychologist. She works at Bellevue Hospital in New York, for those who know it. She lost her sister for mental health issues when her sister was in her 20s. It changed her life and it dedicated her entire life to this. We have 3 boys, a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an almost 3-year-old in a matter of days. And so our lives are very full. We live on a family farm. It's been in her side of the family, oh my goodness, almost 200 years.
What kind of animals do you have on the farm?
We got chickens and things. It's mostly for the kids at this point. It was dairy for a long time with her father. Okay. But what I love about it is that it has multiple homes because again, they're all hands. And these are modest homes. Like candidly, like we're in a one bathroom home, as my wife often says, gosh, it's a little tight, 3 boys and the 2 of us, etc. But it's this where, the generations of families have lived. But most importantly, we can walk to the main house where my father-in-law still lives and let our kids sit for family meals every weekend. That's because nice. When we talk about fulfillment, it is family, it is faith, it is community. We can walk to the family chapel that is, 10 minutes down the road, this land that, literally has people buried in the times and the generations and the to see all of the connection in this way. And so when we talk about our world, how, we in the organization, we talk again about being service and finding these high causes, but how I feel myself is the land, the nature, the connection, the children, the faith, community, all of these things fill me from a fulfillment lens. And then I get to step back out. I just was in Ghana last week and return to the communities that we serve that are beautiful, but can be challenging.
How many days do you like? I don't want to get you in trouble. Maybe your wife hasn't counted, but
yes.
On average, how many days a month are you not at home and you're traveling around the world somewhere?
So I have struggled with that very
Top secret.
You're gonna get me into trouble if my wife is listening to this. So for a long time,
but it must be a couple weeks a month, no?
Well, for a long time, and I don't say this as a source of pride, I was crossing the 200 mark for the longest time.
200.
So it was, and then in kind of radical transparency, my eldest son had some health challenges that required a series of treatments. And so as a result, I suddenly found myself just being home purposely and intentionally a lot more to support him on this journey. And I realized just everything can keep running even when I'm here. And I think that's the entrepreneurial mindset. It's like, you got to get on the plane. And thankfully, if this had been 2-3 years ago, Charlie would have said, I'm going to come down to Miami. We're going to do this face to face. We're going to absolutely make this happen. And now, I'm grateful that we're allowed to have this conversation via Zoom. And it's just as powerful to have this connection together.
And how far does your brother live from you?
Not far. We live and he's, literally a 2-minute walk is to my mom, and my dad passed last year.
And does he have girls and you have boys?
Yeah. Here's also, you're going to get me into trouble, but I'm just sharing the story. He sat me down, your listeners, difference between boys and girls, they can post what they want in comics and get me in trouble for this one. But we got 3 boys on a farm, high energy boys. And so one day he pulled me aside. He said, Craig, I love you. I love my nephews, but we are only meeting at your place from now on, because my boys are like human tornadoes and they tear the entire place apart. So they come up here and get a chance to play with chickens and bunnies and birds and countless pets that have made this place home with my boys. Greatest thing in my life. And so grateful.
That's amazing. And how are the ages pretty similar, your brother's kids?
So my brother's about 5 years older than I am. He's 5 years, 10 months. And so his track a little bit older as a result. He's got, young burgeoning teenagers.
But he's on the road a lot too. I mean, he has to be an equal or more than you.
He is. Well, as we speak right now, he's in Kenya with his wife and with his 2 daughters.
Oh, nice.
So they're on, they're taking the summers in the community where we've got, in Kenya, we've got a hospital we built and a college that supports, and we have a center that we welcome people in on retreat and meditation. And so he's there right now leading one of the workshops. He will be with you in the Amazon basin. And so the nice part, I brought my kids to Ecuador. I've brought my kids to Dharamsala to sit with the Dalai Lama.
I've seen pictures. Yeah, that's great.
Well, my favorite, my eldest met, God bless, when you bring a 7-year-old to meet the Dalai Lama, he still says, "Oh, I loved meeting that man. He gave me candy and chocolate." I'm like, there's a few other things he's done in the world besides that. But, it's just a blessing to be able to share this with kids. And, I started this when I was 12. And I never imagined 31 years later that I'd now be bringing my own kids to do this development work and these journeys around the world. It's the most amazing thing.
So what have I not asked you that I should have asked you that you would like to answer before we wrap up?
Charlie, I got to it's not so much as a question as it's gratitude. I got a lot of gratitude for you. I got gratitude for this conversation. I have gratitude for the fact that you created R360 and put service as a cornerstone and philanthropy for its members. I'm grateful that you've come out with us to India and the Amazon and spent time. I'm also grateful for the newsletter that you choose to share wisdom. My favorite part of it is, yes, I am on your Substack and the financial ideas are amazing, but I actually love your book summaries. I think they're the most beautiful gift you give people. The fact that anyone can sign up and they're open access, because I think wisdom is the most beautiful thing to share. It's a lot of gratitude to you.
Well, thank you. Tomorrow I'm setting a record, six books in one Saturday.
Woo! Love it.
Record.
I'm excited.
After that, I'm going to have to go back to one. But
love it.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for helping us, our members, and your brother. Spectacular partnership. You guys were at our annual conference. Really loved every bit about it. And I look forward to going back to Toronto one of these days. Met some of your other clients, had a good time. On my way out, Christine and I stopped at a Korean barbecue all-you-can-eat place. We almost stayed another day. It was so good. Like, I've never seen those in the States, or certainly I've never run into them, but I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And had a great time with some of your staff too.
Half of the entire city's population was not born in Canada. It's amazing. Most people are shocked by that stat. So you have the greatest food in the world here. So absolutely, come hang out.
It's great. Well, thank you very much. And this is another episode of Fortunate Fishes.